Welcome, everyone. I want to thank you for coming tonight on behalf of the Wichita Journalism Collaborative. We're a group of 11 media organizations here in Wichita, and we want to thank you for coming to our forum on housing with our candidates tonight. We've been covering housing for nearly a year now and have learned a lot, and we're really looking forward to learning more with the candidates tonight. So I'm going to turn things over to Tom Shine from KMUW, and we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. I'm Tom Shine, Director of News and Public Affairs at KMUW. Thank you all for coming tonight. We're going to have a discussion tonight between the two candidates running for District 3 on the Sedgwick County Commission, Celeste Reset and Stephanie Wise. This forum is hosted by the Wichita Journalism Collaborative, which includes KMUW. Members of the collaborative will be helping me ask questions tonight. We will also have time this evening for members of the audience also to ask questions later in the forum. And if you decide you want to do that, you need to come to the microphone down here in front of the stage. But I'll let you know when we're ready to do that. A couple thank yous. I'd like to thank Barbara Bell and Sharon Elslager from the League of Women Voters for acting as our timekeepers tonight. And thank you to Friends University for hosting us in this magnificent space. The format for tonight is as follows. Each candidate will have a 2-minute opening statement. When we ask questions, each candidate will have 1 minute to answer. Then each will have an additional 30 seconds for rebuttal or additional comment. We will alternate who answers first on each question. We will end the forum with 1-minute closing statements. Candidates will go in reverse order of the opening statements. During the forum, I would ask you that you hold your applause until the closing statements are finished. This is a political discussion, not a sporting event, so sit on your hands, please. At the end, we can applaud for both candidates. At the end, we'll have time to do that. But the more time we applaud, the less time we have for questions. Okay? Does that make sense to you guys? You're all set? Okay, then we're going to go ahead and begin. We did a coin flip earlier. Celeste won the coin flip and will speak first. Stephanie, you will go first in the closings. But Celeste, opening statement, please.
Thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it. It gives us a chance to educate you as voters. So I'm Celeste Reset. I'm running for Sedgwick County Commission, District 3. And I'm dedicated to giving the leadership that's full-time and committed to the job because you all deserve that. For the past 5 years, I've been a taxpayer advocate. I led the Save Century 2 movement, and I've uncovered financial scandals involving Wichita City Hall. I'm going to bring that enthusiasm and dedication to you in Sedgwick County. I have an accounting degree, an MBA, and 25 years financial experience as a chief internal auditor, accounting manager, bank examiner, and a fraud investigator. I'm uniquely prepared to serve in this office of county commission, and I would be honored to get your vote. I'm running to reduce the burden of the ever-increasing property taxes and to ensure our county government works for you, not special interests, not developers who have the end game for their pocket. Unlike my opponent who has vowed to keep her full-time commercial real estate job, if elected, I will give you 100% of my efforts. My opponent also has a conflict of interest. The county commissioner makes appointments to the Metropolitan Area Planning Commission, and its subgroups like the Board of Zoning Appeals play a role in affordable housing. My appointees will give top priority to public interest and not be a rubber stamp for developers. Where does my opponent's loyalties lie? Affordable housing has not been given the attention it deserves over the decades. Random decisions like the Riverside TIF are examples of an unfocused housing policy. I will work tirelessly to find innovative funding solutions and build coalition. Let's make our counties stronger together. I'd be honored to have your vote on November 5th. Thank you.
Stephanie, 2 minutes, please.
Is it okay if I stand? I'm more comfortable that way. Thank you for coming. My name is Stephanie Wise, and I'm running for District 3 Sedgwick County Commission. I'm a lifelong resident of Sedgwick County and have deep roots in the community, deep connections with both people and the small businesses that make our community thrive. I am married to my high school sweetheart, Brant Wise, and we are celebrating 16 years of marriage this week. We've got 2 kids in the Goddard School Districts, Lauren, that is 12, and Chandler, that is 11. Professionally, I am not a developer, and I do not have a full-time job. I'm a small business owner, and I have been for the last 10 years, specializing in lease negotiations for both tenants and landlords, none of which has any conflict of interest that my opponent has suggested. I have been in commercial real estate for the last 13 years, and what I have learned as I've knocked doors is that I hear two things from each of my constituents that I speak with, and that is fear and frustration regarding their property taxes. That is a conversation that I have been having with commercial real estate involvement for the last 13 years. It's not a new issue to our homes. It is an issue that affects our families and our businesses every day. I am running for this seat because I believe limited government, low taxation, smart decision-making, and strong leadership will lead to a better, brighter future for our community. I am committed to not only tax relief, but true tax reform. And I believe that is the way to modernize our government and to benefit our taxpayers on a full circle. I am also committed to leading charge and taking action in functional consolidation. We've been talking about it for over 20 years, and it's time to put that into action. I have been talking to county employees, county elected, city elected, and it is a fact that if we are collaborative in the way that we reach across the aisle, stay in our lanes, and not duplicate our services, that we can succeed and represent our taxpayers. Thank you.
First question here will become from me, and Stephanie, go to you since you went second on statements. A question for you, Stephanie, then 1 minute, and then Celeste gets a minute, and then we go 30 seconds. District 3 includes several smaller cities, such as Garden Plain, Cheney, and Goddard. What's the county's role in making sure there is an adequate supply of affordable housing options in those communities?
I believe that's the beauty of what the counties and the cities reach across the aisle and work on. We need to empower our cities to have the flexibility to know the needs. The needs of Goddard is going to be different than the needs of Garden Plain. One way that we've seen that come towards the county is through our HID program. If that program is used as it was intended to use, it could be helpful in those communities, and that's up to the county to be involved, but the city needs to be able to communicate that with us as well. We have a problem with affordable housing and housing that is affordable. So I think that needs to be further defined for maybe some of our future questions of what we're trying to address. But being able to work with our cities and work together on that is the best way to approach that.
And Celeste, if you want to stand up, you certainly may.
Yeah, I was listening to him say stay seated, so I'll get up now too.
Yeah, everybody, go ahead. I'm going to sit.
I followed the rules.
1 minute, Celeste.
Okay. So we've been walking and talking to all of the various constituents. Sedgwick County in the 3rd District, which is the largest district, and it's mainly rural out in western Kansas. We've got smaller cities like Goddard, Viola. There's even problems, I want to say housing problems. When we knock on doors, the biggest problem we found is that there's not affordable housing. I bet a lot of you know that now. A lot of the constituents, when we knock on the doors, like we were in Cheney, their rents are going up, and unfortunately, if their rents are going up, that means they're not saving for a down payment on a house. Many of you may have children like I do. I've got 3 grown children, married, grandchildren, and saving up to make that down payment is pretty tough in this environment with rising inflation, rising property taxes, which I mentioned in my opening statement. So there are a lot of initiatives that are coming through the state and the federal government. One is called Housing First. And Housing First is a partnership that tries to work with rural assistance because, you know, there are homeless in the rural counties. In fact, Lake Afton had a problem with campers in Lake Afton. We've got to work to solve homelessness and affordable housing in all of these communities, including Wichita. Thank you.
Stephanie, 30 seconds.
I think that the approach and the mention of Housing First, it could play into a role in these smaller cities, but that is, Housing First is a program that reaches out to the chronically homeless, and I think we might have 1 or 2 that our outlying cities are affected by, but that Housing First is going to be a city orchestrated event or housing that the city and county share in that role. So yes, Housing First is an approach the county will take, but that is not without the city.
Celeste, 30 seconds.
So as I mentioned before, in these smaller cities that we've been knocking on doors, not only is there a Housing First initiative, but another thing that's coming around too is that they're studying agriculture, because again, I mentioned we're the biggest western district, so there's a lot of farming communities, not only around Lake Afton, but Cheney, and also by Bentley and Viola. And it's interesting to note that when we talk to people, even the farmers are struggling. So there's also agricultural related programs through the USDA, the Department of Agriculture, that help with housing, and they also help with renters. So I think these are important programs that we have to work not only with the federal government on, but also with the state and our legislators in kind of a collaborative approach to help everybody that's in the region that's struggling right now. And rural is one of them with the USDA programs. I also think those are important along with Housing First.
Okay, next question will come from Celia Hack of KMUW. Celeste, you get first shot at this one.
You bet.
District 3, as you mentioned, includes Lake Afton, which formerly allowed long-term campers, but no longer does after the county changed its rules in May. The decision was made because the county said it wanted the park to be more recreational instead of residential, but people living there at Lake Afton, many of whom were non-homeowners on fixed incomes, then had to leave. Do you agree with the decision to no longer permit long-term campers there?
What a great question, Celia. Thank you. That was a tough decision, and I go to the Sedgwick County Commission meetings and I listen to the debate. And it was a very thoughtful debate about Lake Afton, and it wasn't easy because the housing situation and the homeless situation, all of this is very complex. So I don't want to say, oh yeah, that was a great vote, because you're absolutely right. There were campers at Lake Afton. And the problem with that is that they weren't leaving. This was actually people who had packed, they were living there, they had their laundry hanging up, there was trash, there were dogs. So I understand they had to put a limit on it. So the commission voted to do 2 weeks permit camping out there, which actually is important because there's neighbors and there's people, and like we've camped out there before. You can't have homeless camping out in your parks. Unfortunately, there have to be other solutions, and I bet we'll get into that later because there is going to be the multi-agency center to deal with homelessness, and I won't go into that now. But I agree, long story short, it wasn't a tough decision, but you have to respect everybody who wants to use the park, and Lake Afton is a beautiful recreation area, so I support that decision they had to make. Thank you.
Stephanie, 1 minute.
Yes, that was something that had to be addressed, unfortunately. We had, I think, about 20 to 30 steadfasters that were affected by the change in those ordinances, which moved them out of where they were finding their homestead in a time of transition or hardship. The fact of the matter is that it became a problem because ordinances were not in place as they should have been or when they should have been. Lake Afton Park was never supposed to be a housing solution, and it was never supposed to be a part of the housing solution between our city of Wichita, our city of Goddard, or our county. Those people do deserve better, and I think that we can talk to more landlords throughout the cities to see who is willing to take vouchers. We have vouchers available that are not being utilized because we don't have enough landlords that are willing to work with this population. So I think we can start conversation with that. I would have voted as well as to change those ordinances. I think that it was appropriate, and we maintain Lake Afton as a public park for our families.
Stephanie, 30 seconds. Celeste, 30 seconds, please.
As I said now twice in my speech, opening and so forth, Lake Afton is an example of the homeless situation we have, not only in Wichita, but the 20 cities that my district would represent. And it's a tough, emotional situation, but the problem at Lake Afton demonstrates the growing problem we have. When we garden at the Joan of Arc statue, we do that free. It's with the Save Century 2 effort. We deal with the homeless that are down there in downtown Wichita, and now we're seeing the homeless creep out into the other cities. We've got to figure solutions for this problem. Thank you.
The 30 seconds.
I think we're in agreement on this issue. I think that we all know in this room that homelessness is an issue. I believe that we're a community and a county that care for people better than what that displays when we see people having crisis on the street. Again, I believe that Lake Afton is supposed to be a family-oriented location, and that we need to be focused on real housing solutions for these folks that need it. Thank you.
Stay there because you're going to get the next question. At some point, I'll get this figured out, so stay with me. Stefania Lugli was supposed to ask the next question. She's with the KLC's Journal. She is not feeling well, so Celia Hack of KMUW will ask the next question in Stefania's place.
Housing First is a model to address homelessness. The idea of it is that people experiencing homelessness should be housed as the first step in their journey to a more stable life. But some critics say a person should first meet some requirements, such as seeking treatment for substance use or their mental health before being housed. Currently, the county provides about $300,000 a year for rental assistance via its Housing First program, which serves chronically homeless single adults and is in partnership with the City of Wichita. What is your view on the Housing First model, and do you support the county's Housing First program?
I do. I think that the Housing First program has a very strong role in the solution that we're trying to find. I believe that once we get someone housed, we can relieve that stress from their life so they can focus on acquiring a job, on their mental health or substance abuse, whatever their struggle is. I know that they can do a better job getting out of the certain position that they're in if they can have Housing First, not worry about where they're going to lay their head. The Housing First program is a great program, and we are so thankful to be able to support 64 slots within that program as we partner with the City of Wichita. So yes, I am a supporter of Housing First. I think it's great for our community.
Celeste, 1 minute.
So I've mentioned the Housing First program before, so yes, I support it. What we have to do, though, is actually state legislators are pushing back on Housing First. So it's important we continue the dialogue in Topeka and work collaboratively with Topeka so that they don't drop this initiative. The Veterans Administration supports it, the VA does. And having personally known VAs, veterans that struggle, it could be PTSD, it could be substance addiction. There are numerous reasons why our vets fall through the cracks. I absolutely support Housing First, and so we've got to get this cooperation from the state to continue to work with the federal government, because I know the state is quabbled about the fact that these people don't have expectations for treatment or for religion or for any type of buy into a program. They're just allowed to come in, even with their pets, to first take that shelter, to provide shelter. And you know what? That's very important, is that you have to allow these people to come in and not worry about shelter over their heads. And then you start the process of what are their needs? Do they have mental health issues? Do they have medical issues? So, of course, good question. Very supportive of Housing First.
Stephanie, 30 seconds.
Once again, Housing First is something that we need to be looking at as a community. And if it takes going up to Topeka to protect that as a funding program for our community, we should be doing that and staying with what the county can control and making sure that what we can do to help these folks is available. I think that there are, like I said, 64 slots for that. That's probably not enough for the community that we have, but that's what we have the allotment for, and that's what we have the housing for. And once again, this is for single individuals, not for families, so there's certainly some more work that we can do to make sure that we're doing Housing First for families as well, or single moms.
Celeste, 30 seconds.
Okay, and the other thing I want to emphasize too is that you're talking to someone who has an accounting degree. So no matter how much we say we want to do this, or expand the waiting list, or improve 64 spots to 100, the promise I make to you as an accountant and a fraud investigator is we've got to find the resources. We can't just increase taxes to say, oh, we want to take care of Housing First and oversee. You know, I can tell you, working downtown, we see so many homeless. So I do make this pledge to you as an accountant and MBA. I will look to find the dollars before I say, we need to grow this program, we're going to raise your taxes. I'm not going to do that. I'll look for the waste and duplication before I say we're going to spend money for an increase in Housing First. That's my pledge I make to you.
Next question from Chance Swaim of the Wichita Eagle and Kansas.com. Celeste, you're first.
Hey. So let me move this up a little. All right, so District 3, I know we're in a drought right now, includes some of Cheney Reservoir, but Also, you have hundreds of residents who currently live in a FEMA floodplain. Thinking Westlink neighborhood, there's also some stormwater and flooding issues out near some of the newer development in northwest Wichita, Mays area. What would you do to address flooding in your district?
So that's an interesting question, Chase. Thank you for that question. And one thing is it's shifting. The floodplains are actually shifting in western Kansas. Some of you may already know that. And the problem with the shifting of the floodplain is those people that before didn't have to pay for flood insurance are now finding that there's a flood insurance bill that's tacked onto their home that they can choose to pay or not pay, and it's expensive. So the problem with the floodplain is that people that live in that floodplain then are expected to pay a new insurance on top of perhaps rising property tax. And so this just makes the housing situation even more difficult for working families, especially in the areas that he just mentioned, especially in the small rural areas that are part of this district, Sedgwick County District 3. Another thing that's interesting on Cheney, though you didn't actually address it, is Cheney has dropped 7 feet, and that's why we're in this drought condition. And the problem with that is the water in Wichita at the new water plant is going to be dependent on continuing to pump water from Cheney. So we are facing a severe drought situation. Thank you.
Stephanie, 1 minute.
Okay, so regarding the water issue, that is something that we are all affected by. I think all of us might have a sign in our yard that says whether we're well or we're city, and we understand that that's an issue. The floodplain, I think, is a different question, where FEMA has come out with new maps that they haven't implemented or stamped yet, but there are new maps coming out. And I think what needs to be addressed is basically the whole city of Bentley is going to be affected by this new FEMA map. So from the county side, we need to be working with these cities to ensure that we're working with city engineers and planning departments to ensure that we are ready to head that up with our cities and ensure that they are not forced into these FEMA regulations. And if it's possible, to build up around them infrastructure that will allow for them to stay out of that floodplain. That is possible. And ensure that we're able to be there for them for that. I think the city of Bentley is the most affected by that at this point, and we need to come alongside them.
So last 30 seconds.
So the problem with what my opponent just said is you just can't mandatorily tell a city to change their infrastructure. That has to be voted on by the city council in whatever city it is or whatever township. So like, for example, Goddard may vote on putting a moratorium on housing. You can't say we need this infrastructure to deal with the floodplain. So unfortunately, that's going to be decided by each city in each area that's in the floodplain. And again, it goes back. The burden is going to be on the homeowners. Flood insurance is going to have to be something they either pay for or don't pay for. And you can't mandate to FEMA what you want them to do. Thank you.
Stephanie, 30 seconds.
I have a feeling that if you were to have a relationship with the cities and you approach them in a way to help them stay out of this FEMA floodplain or work with them in order to avoid that, I think they might want to work with you. And I think that if you do that, you'll be able to help those homeowners stay out of the FEMA floodplain and not increase their flood insurance. So I do believe that I'm not going to walk in and mandate a city to participate in saving itself out of a floodplain.
Next question will be for me. Stephanie, you're first on this one. 3 of 5 properties in Sedgwick County rose in value this year. Do you believe most Sedgwick County property owners are paying the correct amount of property taxes? If not, why? And what would you do to remedy this?
Unfortunately, this process starts in a position that's not helpful to the homeowner, and it's state regulated. So this is something that we need to be a link in the chain to go to the state and tell them that how they are evaluating or appraising our homes is not it's not conducive to how we can run our community and how we can grow. We need to start at the state level, and then as a county level, we need to hold tight and make sure that we are being very lean in our budgets, holding property taxes to as much as we can. Or limiting them as much as we can. So this is something that we need to work with on the state. It's state mandated, and we can affect that by building relationship, going to the state, and ensuring that they hear our voice.
Celeste, 1 minute.
Sure. It has nothing to do with the state level. Unfortunately, appraisals are in the local market. And inflation has been costing the house values to rise by 7% in 2023 and then 9% in 2024, and they're projecting another 8% increase next year. It has nothing to do with the state. It's the housing market locally. One thing I promise you I will do, again referring to my accounting background, is one thing the county does that we can control on the county level, not state level, but right here as a county commissioner, is the county is the one who decides the final vote on tax abatements for developer properties, whether those tax abatements are renewed, and they also make the final decision on developer incentives like tax increment financing. And one thing I totally disagree with, and it's one of those financial scandals I talked about in front of Wichita City Council, is there's some wealthy developers that did the Riverside TIF, and they got subsidies from taxpayers in order to pay for that infrastructure. That is totally wrong. It should be special assessments. So in the county, that's what I'll be focusing on.
Stephanie, 30 seconds.
I do believe that the last comment regarding the developers is a city issue and not something that the county did. And the appraisal process, maybe I misunderstood the question, but it does start at the state level. Now, our inventory and how our housing market is here locally, yes, that matters too. We can't control inflation, but we can do our part to hold the line and ensure that we are protecting our taxpayers' dollars.
Celeste, 30 seconds.
So again, this is the main difference between my opponent and I, is that I've been a chief internal auditor, am biased, no conflicts. She's a commercial real estate agent and has worked with leasing. It's the way developers are given special assessments that can pass the property tax bill onto us, individual homeowners, instead of on the developers and the businessmen. That's the first thing I promise you I'm going to do when I go inside, is look at the tax abatements and look at the TIF districts, because actually the county does have to sign off on TIFs even though the cities approve them.
Our last question from the members of the Wichita Journalism Collaborative will come from Joe Stump of Active Age magazine and website. Joe, and Celeste, you're first.
Many senior citizens express a desire to age in place, that is, stay in their home as long as possible. Rising property taxes and just the normal cost of maintaining a home make that more and more difficult every year. I was wondering, as a county commissioner, how would you help folks stay in their home as long as possible?
That's an excellent question, and it strikes to the heart, because I've got an elderly mother who lives on her own right now, and property taxes are actually the largest growing group of homeless right now is senior citizens, because they're on a fixed income, and as their property taxes go up, it forces them out of their home. And we were knocking on a neighborhood, I'm not going to mention which one, and there were two neighbors in this duplex. It was a duplex, and their rent was going up. Now, granted, that's not home ownership, but the rent was going up because their landlords were facing higher property taxes. And they had just gotten notice that it was going up $200. And these two people whose doors we knocked on, senior citizens, said, we can't afford this. We're on fixed income with Social Security, so they were looking for other places to live. And it's heartbreaking when you knock on doors and you realize that our parents, or maybe even me in a couple of decades or whatever, we're going to be facing this crisis. So one thing we can do is there is senior housing assistance depending on their income. But the problem is they're not in the poverty level. So the situation we're stuck in here is that if they're not poverty and they're getting a decent Social Security, there's not too much we can do except through the Department of Aging can at least assist with counseling. But I think that one thing we have to do is we have to think carefully about how we spend our money and try to reduce the mill levy again to bring down this burden that's being passed on to our seniors.
Stephanie, 1 minute.
Sure. I think this is a great time to talk about tax reform and not just tax relief. But as we look at tax reform, that is a way that we can subsidize or broaden our tax bases between our property taxes and our sales taxes. We have two proposals out by two different commissioners, both of which I think are well thought through, both of which that I would like to learn more about. And I would be open to any conversation that includes tax reform in a sense of relieving our taxpayers and ensuring that we can look them in the eye and tell them that their property tax dollars are only paying for property or for core services of county government, public safety, public works, and public health.
Celeste, 30 seconds.
So another thing I would worry about with the senior citizens too, but I want to pay kudos, I like to give kudos where kudos is due, is I'm very proud that the state legislators did pass Social Security tax-free, the tax change. So I know that this will provide one relief to all of us and to the older generation that's getting Social Security benefits. They did eliminate the income tax. You all know that, right? Yay! So I think if we can encourage our state legislators to look at the situations we're facing in Wichita and these other rural districts where people are being forced out of their homes, this is the trend we need to follow, is tax relief, especially on the mill levy. Thank you.
Stephanie, 30 seconds.
I'm not sure I have any more to add other than property taxes is a problem. And it's the number one thing that both me and my opponent have stated that we hear door to door. So as a supporter of property tax relief and property tax reform, I can assure you that our seniors are on my mind, and they are the people that I am speaking to as well in our district.
We will now go to audience questions. A couple admonitions here. Your questions must be directed to both candidates, and I lied, I do need you here. 1 minute answers, no rebuttal, just 1 minute straight answers from each of you, please. So make your questions directed to both candidates. Please, no political statements. Questions, please, not stories. And questions about housing, since that is the topic of tonight's forum. So if you would like to move to the microphone and start asking questions, we can do that. If not, I will make up more questions and you have to listen to me. So I would, yeah, there we go. I would suggest come to the microphone. And feel free to queue up here so that we're not waiting. All the students are leaving. I take that as a bad sign. Oh, we have questions.
For coming out and being here. My question is very simple. Is affordable housing a government function or a private function? Could the government control the housing market, whether it's county or state or someone else, or should the private sector? Thank you.
We'll go Stephanie first on this one. 1 minute.
I do believe that it can exist without both participating. I think that government absolutely can affect our housing because of our inflation rates and what it costs to build a home. We can no longer build a home for an affordable price for our young folks that are looking to move into their first home. So they have gone to buying duplexes or renting duplexes in order to bridge that gap. I think that the private sector and our relationship with our developers is going to be important to find a way that we can provide this housing for our population. So I do believe that both have to exist.
Celeste, 1 minute.
That's a good question, Carl, and again, it's not a simple answer. I do think, as we've seen in the past, that there are good government programs that we should continue to take advantage of, like Housing First. I've spoken about it now 3 times tonight. I think that's absolutely a first step. Another problem is the government doesn't really control the assessed values in our county. It's based on inflation, it's based on demand, and it's based on affordability and whether there even is an area to build in. One thing I think the county can do is that we currently have 352 houses that the city of Wichita owns that are empty. And that doesn't make sense to me. When we were knocking on doors, we came across a subdivision called Country Acres, where the little brick houses have been boarded up for 6 years. If the city has bought these houses and they're nice little tiny brick houses, why aren't we putting them on the market? Why aren't we putting them out to bid? I absolutely don't understand why the city, which is the biggest city in my district, has bought 352 houses and they're sitting there empty, unsold, and on the market. That doesn't make sense. Get them on the market.
Go ahead.
Hi, it's an honor to be here. I'm a student here at Friends, and I was just curious if you could specify how you are planning to increase affordable housing specifically for the young people that are looking at possibly staying here after college.
Celeste, you go first. 1 minute.
Okay, I'm going to tag on to that answer I just gave because, like I said, Summit Lawn is in this subdivision I mentioned. And these are nice little brick starter homes. I know any of my kids that were struggling to buy a house would have loved to have gotten into these houses. Summit Lawn, over by Central and Ridge, right by the West YMCA. Why does the city own these and they're not doing anything with them? These are affordable starter homes for college students. I just don't get it. There's a lot of things that don't make sense to me that I want to look into when I get into the county. But these are perfect. They even have fenced-in backyards. They have garages. They've got driveways. And the neighbors whose doors I knocked on said, "Why are these empty? Why is the city not doing anything with them?" So these 352 homes would make a difference in the market for students that are looking for those starter homes. So I'm just going to go back to that and say, when I get into the county, I'm going to look and talk with the Wichita folks and the Wichita City Hall and just say, let's get these houses on the market. What do we need to do? Is there something we need to fix? Let's get them on the multi-list. Thank you.
Stephanie, 1 minute.
So I want to make sure you understand, I'm not trying to pass the ball, but this is not in the county's core functions. The city of Wichita runs the housing authority. That's unique that a municipal would run that, but that is how it is. So we need to be talking to our city of Wichita. I believe that what my opponent just said is she was going to march into their office and tell them what to do with the housing that they have. I don't think that that's the approach, but I do think there needs to be communication between both entities to make sure that we are serving the same constituents in a positive way.
Next question. Stephanie, this will be you first.
It was mentioned earlier the relationship between landlords and tenants, and with rising taxes, them being forced to charge their tenants more. I was wondering, is there anything you can do or anything you can put in place to protect tenants from being overcharged by their landlords?
Yeah, unfortunately, that is an issue. I'm going to go again back to tax reform. The only way that we can relieve property taxes is through tax reform, and to substantially affect what property tax rates are. Now, I think that that also is a good conversation to have as we talk through how property taxes, what happens when they do drop. Are landlords really going to drop their rents just because they're saving money on property taxes now? I don't know that, but I think that that's a great thing to bring up and something for us all to think about as we talk through the tax reform.
Celeste, 1 minute.
There absolutely is a way to work on that situation, and it's called the Affordable Housing Review Board, and they're actually the ones that have ownership of these homes. So I think there needs to be a discussion with the Affordable Housing Review Board to say, look, we've got tenants that want to buy homes. We've got people that are older that are paying rent, that once that rent goes up and these people move to find another apartment, they have no equity. They have no savings. They have nothing to help them if they're injured or something happens to them. There's no home they own. So we have to absolutely go to the Affordable Housing Review Board and say, look, people need to get into homes. People need to have equity in homes, and work with them so that renters, especially seniors or hardworking families that are just above poverty, have some sort of savings to pass on to their generation. Because the home ownership rate in Sedgwick County has decreased. We are going in the wrong direction. We've got to get these renters into their own homes where they control their destinies. So that's the first place I would start. It's a great question. Thank you.
Next question. Celeste, you'll be first here.
Well, you're talking about how to help homeless people. What I want to know, what are the initiatives aimed at preventing homelessness before it occurs?
Would you repeat the
Yeah,
question?
repeat. Slow down a little bit. Relax. You're among friends here. This is slow.
Sorry. Now, I want to know, what are the initiatives that you have to aim at preventing homelessness before it occurs?
Okay, that goes back, now I've talked about this 4 times. That housing initiative is one way that homeless people, like I see when I garden at Save Century, Joan of Arc down at 223 South Main, the homeless people can step into this shelter without having to do any kind of religious counseling or substance addiction counseling. So that's a great initiative as a first step. The other one to help with homelessness is we are going to open a 100-bed mental health hospital in South Central Kansas, and that is just a huge, wonderful step forward. Is the mental health is part of the problem of homelessness. We see them all the time. I see people that think the library is their home and we're invading in their gardens, and they're just out of their minds. So this 100-bed South Central Hospital, it will be a great addition to help with mental health. And then I do believe that the multi-agency center, which we haven't talked about yet, but it will offer substance addiction and counseling and job training. In fact, I toured the Workforce Alliance, and they're doing so much to help people who are homeless get job training. These are all tools that will help with the homeless situation.
Stephanie, 1 minute.
County's role in homeless efforts is going to be through ComCare. So that is the mental health side of homelessness. Many of our homeless population is affected by mental health, by substance abuse, and just hard times. Maybe some of that is PTSD from their services. So we need to be wrapping around them with our services through ComCare, and that's where the county will play a role at the MAC Center as well. And as far as the mental health hospital as well that we're adding, that's a huge benefit to our community. And we need to be sure that our services from the county side, our resources are there for them, and that we are continuing to work with the HOT team through the City of Wichita to identify people that they may not be living on the streets now, but they're couch surfing. And I think that's what your question is how do we get to them first? And I think through helping people get to those mental health services, and Workforce Alliance is a great option too. It's a great asset to our community that we can help with.
Next question. Stephanie, you'll go first.
Hi, so you guys both touched on property taxes and housing prices and how it's like rising. How would you lower it, like, and make it affordable for like middle class or like barely over the top and like for families and all that?
Sure. How to make housing more affordable to the middle class? Okay. Again, property tax reform. We've talked about property tax relief, and we can feel relief through small changes, but the sooner that we continue the conversation and actually take motions towards property tax reform, the better. What that means, and I'll try to do it quickly because I don't have much time, is the proposals that are out there now is separating property tax income and sales tax income, ensuring that the property tax income only pays for county core services, and the sales tax will pay for the quality of life services. There's more to that, but I don't think I have enough time. I'd love to talk to you more about that after the debate or forum.
Celeste, 1 minute.
Unfortunately, that's not an easy problem to solve. We can talk about tax reform, but what it's going to take is we need to do a fine-tooth comb through the finances of the county, and it's almost $600 million. That's a lot of money. And to look and see, as I've been speaking about before, who are we giving tax relief to besides those who are the middle class? And a lot of it, when I've been looking at the Wichita's, I'll just be frank, financial scandals I've seen in the city of Wichita, we give millions of dollars away to developers, and we don't get it back. And we're currently involved in 2 lawsuits involving $3 million because of what we give to developers. I think it's really important that we get people elected, and this is your vote, who really care about you as individuals and taxpayers, and we look at the finances and we make sure the developers aren't getting the handouts, and that the working people of Wichita and Sedgwick County are actually getting a fair shake and representation with how our money is spent. And that's what I promise to do. It's not necessarily, oh, I'm going to cut property taxes, or I'm going to switch it out for sales tax. You can't do that. You have to look at the finances and figure out where the money is going to and try to cut it so that we don't have these exorbitant raises in property taxes every year.
Next question. Celeste, you'll be up first here.
Okay.
Good evening, ladies. On Friday, September 13th, United Way of the Plains released their local Continuum of Care COC competition. And in that competition, ComCare, from a housing perspective, piece of it, ranked one of the lowest on that list. This year, ComCare is going to be asking for $616,000 plus another $100,000 for expansion on that project when they left money on the table that got unused last year. So going forward, in the event that HUD does not award all of that funding, what is your plan to cover that in the event it's not awarded from HUD, from the current budget?
And I can't tell you this is what I'm going to do, because absolutely I appreciate United Way, and I read their Alice report, which is about the growing number of families in Sedgwick County that now are falling in poverty or right above poverty. Alice, that's the report you all put out. So the problem is, again, we've got to get people in office who take the time, and there's some commissioners, but I'm not going to mention them here, who I truly respect. Even in Wichita, I see them too, who look at the numbers, who question, why are we spending $3 million for developers that we're not collecting? Why is this money shifting here? So I absolutely promise you tonight, elected, I will look at the budget. There's 43 departments in Sedgwick County. I've already started talking with the controller, Lindsay, about where is this money going? Why do we have opioid settlement funds that are just sitting there untapped? I will work to look for money that we can shift, or waste that we can eliminate, or duplication that we can eliminate, so we can find the revenue and the money we need to address this housing situation. And thank you for what you do with United Way, because that Alice report is shocking. Shocking.
Stephanie, 1 minute.
Okay, I do believe that I understand that the county spends a lot more money through ComCare that's separate from housing. That United Way, those vouchers go through the county and to United Way to distribute or to offer. We do not have enough landlords that are willing to accept those vouchers. And I mean, if I'm incorrect, can she correct me? I'm welcome to it.
Go ahead.
Well, basically it was, ComCare had a total number of beds and their utilization rate was, they didn't use it.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's kind of understanding, like, how are we going to become more efficient with our resources to ensure that the funds get used, right? Because that was money that was taken away from other social service providers that provide those funds. So it's going back to how are we going to hold people responsible for making sure that the resources were used effectively and that we didn't have beds just not being used. And beds and their utilization rate even without vouchers. So
right. Yeah, no, I mean, I absolutely understand that if we have resources at our hands, we should be, our community should be utilizing those. So that's something that I'd be happy to look more into and understand the county's role in that. It is alarming that if we are not utilizing funds that are coming in and that we're not, I don't know what the cause of that might be, but those are questions that we should be asking about our budget and asking why that $650,000 plus or minus is in there and why we're not using those. So thank you for posing the question. I'll look more into that.
Next question, please. Stephanie will be up first.
Do you believe there's enough collaboration between the government entities and developers and nonprofits to address the housing issue effectively?
Yes, I'm really excited about the collaboration that's happening right now. So right now we have the MAC Center that is going to be an initiative that's shared between our government and our nonprofits or organizations that are working towards our housing and homelessness issues. So yes, we have great collaboration. We need to continue to have great collaboration. I think that's how we see progress happen, and that's how we see these things come from a conversation and into fruition. So I'm really excited about the collaboration that we have right now. I think that it's going to come from not only the link that the county has, but from the links that are connected, which are our city and our state.
Celeste, 1 minute.
Yes, this collaboration I really appreciate and respect. We've got 3 nonprofits right now that are working on the housing situation. That's Mennonite Housing and Humankind, and I forget the third, but they work with them on these houses to rehabilitate them and get them on the market. So this type of collaboration, which I did when I was in the professional world, is key to addressing the problem. So I love to see the nonprofits like Humankind, and then the homeowners put sweat equity into the building, and they actually then help build their home and turn it into a house for their family. And Mennonite Housing, they're all over the area of Sedgwick County. This is another great project that I think gets these 352 homes that have been on the tax rolls earning nothing for 6 years, where people can then move into them and use them. So this collaboration is absolutely critical. And yes, it's a positive thing. I'm excited about that.
Next question. Celeste, you'll be up first.
Okay.
Both of you have both of you say you're proponents of Housing First. You've also indicated that there's 64 slots out there available. So I'm just curious, who would you suggest goes first to the line, and how long should somebody get to stay?
Ew, who goes first to the line? I'd start with the elderly. I'm sorry, but I've knocked on too many doors and seen too many elderly people who are absolutely terrified about where they're going to move. Like I said, Sunday it broke my heart. We knocked on these doors, and these people had just gotten this notice and had to say, we don't know where we're going to go. So elderly first. But again, this has to be collaborative, and I don't want to say that, oh, here's what I would do. I know I'd have to get everybody to agree, and we'd have to work on it like tenant rights. We'd have to work on who gets priority first. But the elderly and also those that the VA should be working with us, and they already are, on the vets that have done their service. My dad was a World War II Army fighter pilot. They should be number 2 in the line because they've done their service to our country, and they deserve our support and our help. So vets. And then after that, I don't have an answer. I think that has to be collaborative with ComCare and collaborative with the Department of Aging and Disability to figure that out. So I don't want to act like I know that, but I would start with elderly and the VA.
Stephanie, 1 minute.
I feel like we get in a dangerous spot choosing certain people over others of who's more deserving of services. They have an application, they have requirements that must be filled in order to receive that assistance. And I think if you're going with the Housing First approach, you are not just stopping at getting a roof over their head, but continuing to care for them and help them through whatever struggle they're having, whether that's mental health support or vet support or something else. So I have a struggle picking and choosing who's more important than the other. I think all people are important, and that application helps us sort through what applications we have and who we can provide housing to. Thank you.
Next question, Stephanie will be up first.
We will never be able to meet the housing supply needs of our county and our cities by building single-family homes and duplexes alone. Our communities will need more diversity in housing types to have a supply that meets demand. How can the county encourage or incentivize housing such as accessory dwelling units, townhomes, row housing, and other multifamily ownership opportunities?
Stephanie, 1 minute.
I think that goes back to both the public and the government sectors and making sure that we're working together on what areas can we change the zoning to allow for the multifamily. How do we have view of infill opportunities? There's plenty of opportunities for infill in the Wichita area and surrounding. So I think that that's a partnership that needs to be looked at. It's certainly a plan, and it's not just throwing what's the saying? You throw something up at the wall and see what sticks. It needs to be extremely intentional, and we need to have both parties in that conversation.
Celeste, 1 minute.
There was a great program that was just approved about 2-3 years ago called Places for People, which I thought was a great idea because Places for People, which was approved, and then you don't hear anything about it now, was to allow a homeowner who had perhaps an extra large lot get the zoning to build a smaller house or to build a garage apartment. And I don't know what happened to Places for People, but it died, but that was a great idea. So that's worth revisiting because that was looking at what you're saying, different types of construction and different types of small homes that we could build and do the infill. Because right now in Wichita, our density has decreased and we have empty lots. And these empty lots were a result of unpaid taxes or code violations, so they were destroyed, but now there's empty lots. So why aren't we looking at placing a building with these 3 nonprofits I mentioned? Why aren't we expanding this program? Because Sally Stang has 60 employees working for her. Why aren't they doing the work to take these lots that are empty, fill them, and get usage back out of these properties? So it's a great question. I don't know why we've lost our direction on that, but I will definitely look into it because I thought Places for People was a step in the right direction. But does anybody hear about that now?
Seeing no more questions, this is your last chance. And I thank you for all those insightful questions. We'll go to closing statements. Stephanie, you get to go first because she got to go first on the opening statement. So if you want to give us 1 minute of a closing statement, please.
Okay, well, thank you so much for hosting this event. Again, I am running as a small business owner. I have experience in commercial real estate, yes, and I am very well knowledgeable on property taxes and how they affect not only our small business owners, but also our homeowners as well. I do believe that I've had to correct and redirect a couple of many questions and many answers. I am running for Sedgwick County Commission, not the City of Wichita. And I think we need to be very careful. If we truly want limited government, that's going to come with making sure that we're staying in our lanes and we're talking across the aisle. We're friends, we're collaborative. And that's where I see our county and our city right now, and that's where I intend to continue to be, should I have the opportunity to serve as your next county commissioner for District 3. Voting is November 5th. I encourage you and implore you to exercise your right to vote. Get out and vote on November 5th, and I hope that I can earn your trust and your vote. Thank you all for being here, and thank you for hosting.
1 minute. 1 minute, Celeste.
Yes, thank you all for being here and taking care of listening to us and what we have to say, because it shows that you care about voting. And I really appreciate your time spent here. So I'm Celeste Reset. I'm a fourth-generation Kansan. We were farmers, so I understand the rural district I represent and the issue that farmers face and the agricultural problems right now that's occurring in western Kansas. The drought conditions with Cheney, the homeless situation, I see it when I work downtown. Here's how I'm different from my opponent. I have no contacts with developers. I'm an independent person, and I will work full-time. I will not be holding another job. I am retired, and if I get into office with your vote, I will work full-time for you. I've got an accounting degree and an MBA, and when I did bank exams, I was fair, I was impartial, but I had to do an absolutely accurate job, and I promise you I will do that too. I can't stand up here and say I'm going to cut your property taxes, but I can promise you when I get in there, I will look at the numbers and ensure that your money is spent fairly for you as a taxpayer advocate. Thank you for being here November 5th, Celeste Reset. Thank you.
Now you may applaud. Thank you all for coming. I will point out that tomorrow night, Tuesday at 6 o'clock, we will do this again for District 2. Sarah Lopez and Jeff Blueball are the two candidates in District 2. We will have questions from a panel of Wichita Journalism Collaborative members, as well as audience questions. So if you want to come back in and do it tonight, tomorrow night, 6 o'clock, Tuesday night, here at Friends. Thank you for coming.